The boy had burned through 5 tutors in 2 months. One quit before lunchtime. Another left in tears. And the last one? Well, she filed a restraining order. Everyone in the city knew the name Grant Whitmore, the billionaire tech mogul, the genius behind the largest AI company in the country, the man who made his first million at 23 and his first billion before 30. He was the kind of man who had everything: a sprawling glass mansion on the hills, a fleet of self-driving cars, assistants who whispered updates into his earpiece every 10 minutes. Power, wealth, control. But the one thing Grant Whitmore could not control was his own son, Liam, 6 years old. Blonde hair, blue eyes, and eyes full of rage. Not sadness, not confusion. Rage. It started subtly, slamming doors, screaming at staff, refusing to eat unless someone begged. But things escalated. Fast. At his elite private school, he threw an iPad at a teacher's face. When they tried homeschooling, he locked one of the tutors in the bathroom. Psychologists called it oppositional defiant disorder. But the staff had a different name for it: the curse of the mansion. No one lasted. Not teachers, not maids, not nannies. Even the chef refused to cook for the boy after he hurled hot soup across the table during dinner. And Grant? Grant was too busy changing the future of humanity to deal with a broken little boy. Every time the school called, his assistant answered. Every time Liam cried, it was the maid who comforted him, until she quit. "My job is to clean floors, not hearts," she'd said before storming out the door. The whispers grew louder. Grant's billions can buy anything, except peace. And yet, there was one final attempt. An ad posted quietly but desperately, seeking private tutor for 6-year-old child. Must be calm, firm, and emotionally resilient. Pay $10,000 per week. Non-negotiable. No qualifications listed. No degree required. Just 3 impossible words. Don't give up. That ad reached a woman named Rena James, a former public school teacher with a warm laugh and the patience of a saint. After her school was shut down due to funding cuts, she took up part-time tutoring to stay afloat. When she saw the ad, she didn't laugh. She didn't doubt herself. She didn't ask for details. She just said, "When do I start? If this story is captivating to you, like, and also tell us where you are listening from." The day she arrived, the mansion gates didn't open right away. Instead, a disembodied voice from the intercom warned her, "You still have time to back out." But she stepped through anyway. The front door swung open, revealing marble floors, high ceilings, and tension you could cut with a knife. Grant met her in a hallway lined with art and surveillance cameras. He looked her up and down, skeptical. "Another one already?" he muttered to his assistant. Then to Rena, "Let's skip the pleasantries. If he bites you, I have Band-Aids in the first aid cabinet." She didn't flinch, didn't laugh, didn't even blink. She simply said, "Children aren't born monsters. They become what we let them be." Grant didn't know whether to feel insulted or impressed, so he just waved her toward the study and walked off. Behind that door was Liam, curled up on a bean bag, watching violent cartoons on a tablet. He didn't look up, didn't speak, didn't care, until Rena sat down, not across the room, not beside him, but on the floor, right at his eye level. "Hi, Liam," she said gently. "I'm Rena, not here to fix you, just here to understand you." He squinted at her. "You'll leave like the others," he spat. "Maybe," she smiled, "but for now I'm here." The next hour was chaos. He screamed. He insulted her. He threw his tablet at the wall. She picked it up, wiped it clean, and sat down again. No raised voice. No punishment. No fake smiles. She waited. "You're weird," he finally muttered. "Takes one to know one," she replied. For the first time in months, he smirked. Outside the door, Grant watched on the security monitor. Confused, intrigued, suspicious. He turned to his assistant. "Make sure she signs an NDA, and triple her rate if she stays past lunch." The assistant nodded. "You really think she'll last?" Grant paused. "No, but I'd be a fool not to hope." Downstairs, Rena was teaching Liam how to fold paper airplanes. He was still rude, still resistant. But something had cracked, a tiny hairline fracture in the wall he built around himself. And in that fracture, something flickered. Not obedience, not submission, but trust. They all came for the paycheck. She came with purpose. He had all the money in the world, but she had the one thing he couldn't buy: patience. As she walked through the mansion doors, two mates passed her quickly. One muttered, "Good luck," without stopping. The other whispered, "Poor kid," and vanished down the hall. Rena's eyes didn't dart around, even though the space was overwhelming. The chandeliers, the white marble, the silence that felt too loud. She simply adjusted the strap on her bag and kept walking until she found a young woman with a clipboard. "Ms. James?" the woman asked. "Yes, ma'am," Rena replied with a calm nod. "You'll be working in the East Wing. Follow." No introductions. No explanation of the boy's behavior. Just a brisk pace through an endless stretch of hallways, past robotic vacuum cleaners and rooms that looked more like museum displays than a home. When they reached the study, the assistant paused. "If it gets too much, just press the red button on the wall. Security will handle the rest." Rena blinked slowly. "I won't need it," she said. The assistant gave her a look, one part concern, one part disbelief, and left her alone. Inside the room, Liam sat cross-legged on the carpet, building something with toy blocks. He didn't look up. Rena didn't speak right away. She walked in softly, her footsteps making no sound on the thick rug. She looked around, not at the expensive furniture, but at the subtle signs most people missed. The broken pencil on the desk, the balled-up tissue under the bookshelf, a scratch on the wall near the door, likely from a chair flung in anger. This wasn't just a bad kid. This was a boy in pain. She gently sat down on the floor beside him, careful not to tower over him. She didn't ask for his name, didn't tell him hers. She just picked up a block and started building beside him. For 10 full minutes, they sat in silence, block by block. No words, no rules. Then quietly Liam spoke. "What happened to your face?" Rena paused. She touched a small scar near her eyebrow, a faded memory from years ago. "One of my students threw a chair at me," she said simply. "Missed, barely." Liam stared at her. "And you stayed?" "Of course." He wasn't mad at me. He was mad at the world. He looked back down at the blocks, then whispered, almost too softly to hear, "I didn't mean to hit Miss Johnson." She just kept talking. Rena nodded, not in judgment, just to let him know she heard him. Later that afternoon, Grant checked the hallway camera feed. Rena and Liam were still in the room. He furrowed his brow. Usually by now there'd be yelling, a slammed door, a call from security. Instead, all he saw was his son sitting on the floor, quietly building something, and a woman beside him, just listening. By evening, Rena hadn't given a single math lesson, no grammar drills, no reading practice. Instead, she sat with Liam on the patio, watching clouds move across the sky. She asked him questions not about school, but about dreams. "If you could build anything," she said, "what would you make?" He thought for a long time, then said, "A machine that makes people love you, even when you're not perfect." Rena smiled softly. "That machine already exists," she said. "It's called kindness." The next day she returned. So did the next, and the one after that. She didn't try to fix him. She didn't push. She just stayed. Each day, she peeled back a little more of the wall Liam had built around himself. And each day, Grant found himself watching from a distance, sometimes from a hallway, sometimes from the security feed, sometimes just standing at the bottom of the stairs, listening to his son laugh for the first time in over a year. He didn't know how to say it, but part of him felt jealous of her calm, of her connection, of how easily his son trusted her when he wouldn't even look his own father in the eyes. That night, Grant asked Rena to sit down for a quick debrief. She agreed. They sat across from each other in the massive, cold dining room, a table meant for 20, with just 2 glasses of water between them. "You're not doing any tutoring," Grant said. "No homework. No tests." "That's right," Rena said. "So what exactly am I paying you for?" She looked him in the eye. "You're paying me to be human with your son, and I think it's the first time he's had that in a while." Grant didn't respond, but he didn't fire her either. That night, after she left, Liam asked something no one expected. "Is she coming back tomorrow?" And when the assistant said yes, the boy smiled. The third day started like the others. Silent right up the hill, quiet entrance through the side gate, polite nods from the staff who no longer thought she'd last. But something felt heavier. The air was tight. The house was too quiet. When Rena reached the study, Liam wasn't there. Instead, a loud crash echoed from upstairs, followed by another. She didn't flinch, didn't ask. She just walked calmly toward the noise. In the hallway, two maids stood frozen at the top of the stairs. He locked himself in his room, one whispered. He's throwing things again. Rena gently stepped past them. She knocked. Once. Twice. No answer. Then she sat down, right there in front of the door. Inside, Liam could hear her breathing. He was pacing, furious, his chest heaving. Books were scattered. A drawer was tipped over. A broken lamp lay near the window. He wanted her to go away, to quit like the rest, to run. But she didn't. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. Still, she sat. Finally, his small voice called out through the door. I don't want to tutor. Good, she said calmly. I don't want to be one. Silence. Then why are you here, he asked. Because you deserve someone who stays, she replied. The door creaked open, just a few inches. Liam stood there, red-faced, fists clenched, eyes defiant. You'll leave, he muttered. They always do. Rena met his gaze. You might be right, she said, but not today. He slammed the door again, but this time he didn't lock it. An hour later he emerged. Hair messy, shirt wrinkled, feet bare. He stood in front of her, not saying a word. She didn't either. Instead, she held out a small bag. I brought puzzles, she said. Why? Because when your hands are busy, your heart can relax. They sat on the floor. No forced conversation. No expectations. Just quiet moments between broken pieces. And slowly, he began to work the puzzle. At first clumsily, angrily, then with more focus. She didn't correct him. Didn't praise him either. She just did the puzzle with him, piece by piece, until a small picture of a fox took shape. It's missing a piece, he grumbled. We all are, she said. Afterward, they moved to the patio. He seemed calmer, but there was still a storm inside him, one she could feel just under the surface. What do you hate most about kids? He asked suddenly. She raised an eyebrow. I don't hate kids. Come on, he insisted. Everyone hates something. She leaned back in her chair, thinking. Okay, I don't like it when they lie. Not because I'm mad, but because I know they're scared of the truth. Liam didn't speak, but his face changed just slightly. Do you lie, Liam? He didn't answer, but his fingers tightened around the armrest. Only when I want someone to go away, he whispered. Later that evening, Rena was getting ready to leave when Liam stopped her near the foyer. Hey, he said, voice quiet. What if I'm just bad? She turned slowly, knelt down, looked him in the eyes. You're not bad, she said. You're hurt. There's a difference. His lips trembled for a second. Then he turned and ran upstairs. She didn't follow. Some wounds need space before they can heal. In the car ride home, Rena sat in silence. She wasn't shaken, wasn't frustrated, but she did feel the weight of him, the sadness he carried so tightly, the anger that protected it. She remembered something her grandmother once told her. Some kids are born into storms. They don't need umbrellas. They need someone who won't run when the rain gets heavy. She wasn't going to run. Not from Liam. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Back at the mansion, Grant watched the hallway camera again. He'd seen the moment Liam opened the door. The puzzle session, the talk on the patio, the silent goodbye. It unsettled him, not because it was bad, but because it felt like something he hadn't seen in his own house in years. Peace. Still, part of him resisted. He couldn't explain it. Maybe pride, maybe guilt. Maybe the fear that someone else could do what he couldn't. He turned to his assistant late that night and said, Keep watching her. I want to know everything. Upstairs, Liam couldn't sleep. Not because of nightmares, but because for the first time in a long time, he was hoping she'd come back tomorrow. Rena arrived early that morning. No one was awake yet. The kitchen was still dark. The house still silent. But she didn't mind. She liked the quiet. It gave her time to breathe and to prepare. Because she knew today would be different. When Liam came downstairs, he didn't stomp. He didn't shout. He just walked up to her quietly and asked, Do you want to see something? Rena looked up from her tea. Sure. He took her hand. No words. Just led her to a small hallway she hadn't seen before, past the main study, down a corridor with old family portraits. At the end was a door. He hesitated. then turned the knob. The room was filled with dust and silence and grief. A woman's perfume still lingered faintly in the air. The bed was perfectly made. A book set open on the nightstand. A glass of water untouched, still half full. Photos lined the walls. A young woman with the same eyes as Liam. The same smile. Rena didn't need to ask. She knew. This was my mom's room, Liam said softly. He walked over to the bed and sat down. They don't let me come in here, but I sneak in sometimes. He picked up the book, held it for a moment, then put it back. She used to read to me every night, even when I didn't want her to. She said stories could make monsters feel small. He looked up at Rena, but when she died, the monsters got big again. Rena sat beside him. Not too close, not too far. Tell me about her, she said gently. And for the first time in over a year, Liam talked. Not in anger, not in sarcasm, but in memory. He told her how his mom made blueberry pancakes on Saturdays, even when she was tired. How she used to make up bedtime stories instead of reading real ones, stories where Liam was always the hero. How she once made an entire blanket fort just to help him get through a storm. She was funny, he said, and brave, and loud in a good way. Rena smiled. She sounds like someone who loved you deeply. Liam nodded, eyes glassy. She did. Then came the words he hadn't said out loud before. She had cancer. But no one told me at first. He clenched his hands tightly. They just said she was tired, that she needed rest. But then she didn't wake up. A pause. A long, quiet one. And my dad? He didn't say anything. Not really. Just told me to be strong. As if I knew what that meant. Rena's voice was steady. Did you cry? Liam shook his head. I tried, but I couldn't. I felt broken, like someone unplugged something inside me. She placed a gentle hand on his back. That's not broken, Liam. That's grief. And sometimes, grief looks like silence. They sat like that for a while. No lessons. No plans. Just two people in a room with a memory. That afternoon, Liam didn't act out once. He asked if they could write a story together. Rena handed him a journal and said, You write it. I'll help you shape it. He sat down with a pen, thought for a moment, then scribbled the first words. Once there was a boy who lost his way, until someone sat beside him and stayed. Meanwhile, Grant stood in his office, staring at a photo of his late wife. He hadn't entered her room since the funeral. He couldn't. But now he was starting to feel something again. Not comfort, not peace, just something. He didn't know what Rena was doing, but whatever it was working, and that terrified him. That night, Liam knocked on his father's study door. Grant looked up from his tablet. Yes. Liam shuffled in, clutching the journal. I wrote something today. Grant blinked, caught off guard. Okay. Liam placed the journal on the desk and turned to leave, then paused. She makes the house feel warm again, he said. And then he walked out. Grant stared at the journal, and for the first time in months, he opened it. Upstairs, Rena stood outside the bedroom door, holding a small box wrapped in brown paper. She'd found it earlier, tucked away in her closet. An old storybook, The Little Engine That Could. It was torn, used, loved. She placed it on the boy's nightstand. Not as a lesson, but as a gift. Something simple, something whole. Things had been going too well, too quiet. And in Grant Whitmore's world, quiet wasn't comfort. It was warning. Because comfort for him had always been followed by loss. So when he started seeing his son smiling again, asking questions, showing up to breakfast with messy hair and sleepy eyes, but showing up, it didn't fill him with peace. It filled him with suspicion. He didn't understand what Rena was doing. She wasn't assigning homework, wasn't teaching calculus, wasn't drilling flashcards. Yet his son was changing, and it bothered him. Because if she could do it, a woman with no Ivy League degree, no therapist title, no clipboard, what did that say about him? One evening, Grant sat across from Rena in the formal sitting room. He didn't beat around the bush. I want to change the structure, he said. Add in assessments, curriculum benchmarks, measurable goals. Rena stirred her tea slowly. Liam isn't ready for benchmarks, she said gently. He's still learning how to breathe. Grant didn't like that answer. You're not a therapist, he snapped. You're a tutor. You were hired to educate, not coddle. Rena didn't raise her voice, didn't flinch. She just said, I wasn't hired to teach him letters. I was hired to keep him from disappearing. A long silence stretched between them. Then Grant stood. Starting Monday, I want test results. Or we reevaluate this arrangement. He left without waiting for her response. The next day, Rena did mention it to Liam. She showed up, as usual, sat beside him for breakfast, helped him clean up his cereal when it spilled, laughed at his joke, a terrible one about giraffes. But the shift in energy was there. Liam felt. He always did. Did I do something wrong, he asked. Not at all, Rena said softly. Then why do you look like someone kicked your cat? She smiled. Maybe I'm just tired. But she wasn't tired. She was worried, because she'd seen it too many times. A child on the edge of healing, yanked backward by an adult trying to control the process. And she could feel Grant pulling, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Still, that didn't make it any easier. Later that afternoon, Grant sent in a formal letter through his assistant. A list of learning objectives, weekly performance metrics, suggested IQ test prep. Rena read it, folded it neatly, placed it in her bag, then went on with her day like nothing had changed. But Liam noticed she was quieter, less playful, more cautious, and he hated it. Why are you acting weird, he asked. Rena gave him a tired smile. Some people don't believe in slow miracles, she said. Liam stared at her, confused. But you do, right? She nodded. Always. That night, Liam refused to eat dinner. The chef reported back to Grant, who shrugged it off. He's manipulating her, he said. She's not tough enough. But he was wrong. It wasn't manipulation. It was mourning. Mourning the sudden shift, the return of pressure, the invisible weight that kids feel long before they know how to describe it. On Friday, Rena showed up, like always. But this time, she carried a file folder. Inside were lesson plans, tests, charts, all the things Grant had asked for. But before handing it over, she sat down with him. You asked for proof, she said. Here it is. She laid out the sheets, filled with graphs, numbers, progress maps. Grant glanced at them, didn't say a word. But, she added, none of this shows what matters. He looked up. And what exactly is that? She held his gaze. That your son can finally sleep through the night. That he lets me brush the knots out of his hair without screaming. That he writes stories again. A beat. That he's smiling. Grant didn't speak, didn't move, just stared, because deep down he knew she was right. But he was afraid. Afraid to trust it. Afraid to lose it. Afraid that if he let her in too far, she might leave too. The next day she didn't come. A personal emergency, the assistant said. Just one day off. But Liam didn't know that. He waited by the window, refused to eat, refused to play. By evening, he locked himself in his room. Grant stood outside the door, fist raised to knock. But he didn't. Instead, he said, she'll be back tomorrow. Liam didn't answer, but his silence said everything. When Rena returned on Sunday, Liam didn't run to her, didn't smile, didn't speak. He just walked up, grabbed her hand, and held it tightly, not letting go. And without a word, she sat beside him, back to square one. But she didn't mind, because healing isn't a straight line. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. Liam didn't explode in the way he used to. No yelling, no breaking things, just quiet withdrawal, the kind of silence that scares you more than noise ever could. He stopped laughing, stopped asking questions, stopped writing in his journal. Rena saw it happening. She tried to reach him slowly, gently. But he was folding into himself like a paper bird caught in the rain. And she knew why. The pressure was back. The walls were closing in again. He wasn't being taught. He was being tested, measured, watched, weighed. And he could feel it in every word, every look, every form his father sent down the hall. By Thursday, Liam wouldn't even leave his room. Rena came, sat outside his door like she had the first week. I'm still here, she said softly. Whenever you're ready. No answer. Just the sound of covers being pulled over his head. That night, Grant asked her to join him for dinner. The long table again. The same distance. The same tension. He poured a glass of wine for himself. None for her. You're losing him, he said bluntly. Rena set her fork down. No, he's losing himself. And I'm trying to keep him from disappearing completely. Grant leaned forward. He needs structure. He needs to toughen up. He's 6, she replied calmly. He needs love. He scoffed. Love didn't save his mother. The words came out colder than he intended. But once they were out, he didn't take them back. Rena inhaled quietly. No, but the absence of it is what's killing him now. The next morning, Rena didn't show up. No call. No explanation. Just gone. Liam waited by the window again. He didn't speak. He didn't eat. He just watched the gate. All day. And when she didn't come, he didn't cry. He didn't get angry. He just went back to his room, curled into a ball, and didn't move. Grant paced the study that night. He thought about calling her. Thought about firing her. Thought about doubling her pay. But none of that felt right. Because deep down, he knew this wasn't about the job anymore. This was about something he hadn't done in a very long time. Say, sir. The next day, Rena showed up, but not to work. She didn't walk through the staff entrance. She came through the front door and asked to speak to Grant. Alone, they met in the sitting room, the same place where they'd argued, where he'd dismissed her. But this time, she wasn't there to be polite. She stood tall, eyes steady. I'm not coming back unless you stop interfering, she said. Grant stiffened. Excuse me. You hired me to help your son, but you're so scared of what that means. You're sabotaging it. He started to respond, but she raised a hand. I'm not angry. I'm heartbroken, because that boy is reaching out to you in the only ways he knows how, and you keep meeting him with fear. A pause. You're not a bad father. You're a scared one. I understand that. But Liam needs more than money and metrics. He needs you. The room went quiet. Grant's mouth opened, then closed. His jaw tensed. His hand twitched. And then quietly, unexpectedly, he sat down and buried his face in his hands. I don't know how to talk to him, he whispered. Rena walked over, knelt beside him. Start with I'm sorry. Then just keep showing up. That evening, Grant stood outside Liam's door. Not with a lecture. Not with a rule. With a book. Can I read to you? He asked through the door. No answer. He waited. Then slowly, the door creaked open. And for the first time in over a year, father and son sat down together. No tablets. No screens. Just a book. And the quiet sound of a voice Liam barely recognized anymore. Down the hall, Rena sat in the kitchen listening. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just breathed. And for the first time in weeks, it didn't feel like holding her breath. The next morning, Liam met her at the front door. Bag packed, hair brushed, holding the journal. Can we write the next chapter? He asked. She knelt down and smiled. We already are. Time didn't fix everything. It never does. But it gave them space. And in that space, something new began to grow. Liam didn't become perfect. He still had bad days. Still got overwhelmed. Still froze up sometimes when the world felt too loud. But he was different now. He talked. He laughed. He let people in. And most importantly, he believed he was worth loving. Grant started coming home earlier. Sometimes he'd just sit in the hallway while Rena and Liam worked. Other times he joined in quietly at first, unsure of his place. But Liam always made room for him, even if it was just a gesture, a glance, a word. They began a new tradition. Every Sunday they'd cook together. Rena taught them how to make real pancakes, not the box kind. Flour, milk, sugar, a mess, and laughter. Always laughter. One afternoon, Liam brought home something from his new school, a crumpled certificate. It read, Best Storytelling Award. His teacher had underlined the words, imagination, empathy, courage. Grant hung it on the fridge like it was a Nobel Prize, because to him it was. At the end of that week, Liam came downstairs with something behind his back. He handed it to Rena, a small drawing. Stick figures, one tall, one short, one with wild curly hair. It's us, he said, our little team. She smiled, tears just behind her eyes. Can I keep it? He nodded. Your family now. Months passed. The house felt warmer, not just in temperature, but in spirit. Music played more often. Dinner was shared at the table. Bedrooms no longer felt like caves, and the sound of Liam's laughter echoed down the halls without fear of being shushed. Rena never moved in, but she didn't need to. She belonged in every way that mattered. One evening, after reading from The Little Prince, Liam looked up and said, I think I'm okay now. Rena brushed the hair from his eyes. "You've always been okay," she whispered. "You just needed someone to remind you." She wasn't just a tutor. She wasn't just a woman with patience. She was a hand that steadied a falling family, the warmth that returned to a cold house, and the reason a father and son learned to find each other again. If this story moved you even a little, take a second to think about the Rena in your own life, the person who stayed when they didn't have to. And if you've ever been Liam, just know healing isn't weakness. And love, real love, always shows up. Subscribe to Black Untold Stories for more powerful emotional narratives that don't just entertain. They remind us of who we are and what we need. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next story. Drop a comment below. Who was your Rena? We'll be reading every one. Until next time, keep listening, keep feeling, and above all, keep showing up.